أبدأ بذكر الله وأصلي على الزين اللي جمع خلقه.
Next, after the Prophet ﷺ's demise, we had the stage of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. What happened was, so imagine if this is a timeline, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was 40 years old when he was given prophethood, and he was 63 years old roughly when he passed away. So this was his demise at 63. And then the Khilafah of Abu Bakr lasted for 2 years. Okay, there was roughly about 2 years there, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And then after that you had approximately 10 or 11 years of the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu. So this was the Khilafah of Umar. Okay, all of that. And then you had the Khilafah of Uthman, which was roughly stretched about 12 years, 12, 13 years. Okay, so Uthman, about 12, 13 years there. Okay, so this was Uthman. And then you had after that the period of Ali radiallahu anhu, which was only, you can say, 4 years, possibly 4, 5 years. That would be bigger. Okay, about 4 or 5 years. This was the era of Ali. And then you had other Khalifas coming after that. So what happened was, in this era, there was a famous battle that took place called Yarmouk. Okay, Yarmouk is a place which is found at the north of Saudi Arabia. So imagine, this is the map of Saudi Arabia. There's Africa, and there you have Syria, and then you have there. So imagine that's the Saudi Arabia map. Mecca is over here, Medina is over here. Around this area is the area of Yarmouk. So the Muslims were having a war, were having a battle with the Byzantines. So a lot of the companions were martyred here, especially those who were known for memorizing the Quran. Many companions were martyred there. So what happened was, Umar radiallahu anhu, because he quickly perceived this issue, he quickly came to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He told Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar did, that if we don't do something about the Quran now, the memorizers of the Quran will die, and there'll be no one left who knew the entire Quran. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was not willing to do it. He said, how can I do something the Prophet ﷺ has not done? But eventually Umar persisted and made him understand, and he accepted. So they went then to Zayd ibn Thabit, and they told Zayd ibn Thabit, who was one of the scribes of the Quran, that we want you to head this project, we want you to be the manager of this project, and we want you to compile the Quran and make sure that verses of the Quran are compiled in one place, so that the Quran does not become lost in any way. So he also was a bit reluctant, eventually accepted, and he began to, it took him several months, and it was a very meticulous and critical method that they used in compiling the Quran in the order. Eventually this was presented, this order, and this was the order that the Prophet ﷺ actually recited the Quran. So it's the order that we have from Fatiha all the way up to Surah An-Nas, and this was the order the Prophet ﷺ recited the Quran the last time before he passed away. So the last time in Ramadan before he passed away, this was the order that he recited it in. And so this became, everyone agreed, all the Sahaba, no one had an issue with this. Everyone agreed, this is the Quran, this is the order of the Quran, these are all the verses, these are all the chapters, and this is the order the Prophet ﷺ had. So anyway, this is what we call the first compilation of the Quran after the Prophet ﷺ. Now then what happened was, if you remember, we had the issue of the dialects, and we said that the dialects were to allow people to recite the Quran in their own dialect, in their own way, to stretch words or to pronounce certain words according to their own local recitation or pronunciation of the words. So what happened was, in the year, this was roughly in the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu. In the time of Uthman, the Muslims army extended, and they went all the way up to a place called Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, if you know, is a place that's between Turkey and Iran. A place that's found between Turkey and Iran. Azerbaijan um, Azerbaijan. I think that's how you spell it. Azerbaijan. That's the place. So the Muslims were, there was a garrison there. Muslims were fighting against the enemy, and there was a big problem with the Muslims because they began to dispute about how to recite the Quran. So these were later Muslims. They actually began to dispute about whose recitation is correct and whose is not, and it actually was leading to people refusing to pray behind one another because they were reciting it in different tones. So at the time of Uthman had to sort this out. So there was a companion by the name of Hudhayfa. Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu, who was the famous Hudhayfa ibn Yaman, who had the secrets of the Prophet ﷺ. He came and he told Uthman, there's this big problem we have. If we don't deal with it now, people are just going to cause lots of fitna and problems. The issue was this. The issue was the font that the Quran was written in. The font that the Quran was written in. This font was not a fixed font. In other words, the font was so open that people were pronouncing the letters in their own ways, and pronouncing, some of them were pronouncing it incorrectly. So Uthman radiallahu anhu, what he decided was, he got a group of companion experts together, and he said, I want you to write this new font, the new font that accommodates for all the different types of recitation. The font must accommodate for all the different recitations, so that people can accept and tolerate that there does exist different recitations and pronunciations of the letters, and there's nothing wrong with that. And when they see this font, everyone will be able to read it in their own, the way that they've learnt it. So if you look at the Quran that we have today, this is probably something you've thought about. You thought to yourself, well, why do we pronounce it like this? Why don't we pronounce it like this? If you notice, if you can see here, what we have is, you see the word Rahman. If you notice, you have this little alif there. Yeah, they don't write it with a long alif, a small little alif. Likewise, Al-Alameen. So you have this alif here, there. Likewise, Maliki. Yeah, Maliki. And there's many other words in the Quran as well, written in that form. So what happened there was, the Quran was written in such a font that it capacitated, enabled everyone to be able to recite it without accusing the others of being incorrect. So he did a very amazing thing, Uthman radiallahu anhu did, which was to actually bring the whole ummah together and be able to recite the Quran. So he began to recite the Quran, the Quran began to be recited in this manner. However, one thing you must be aware of, the Quran that I just showed you now, the font wasn't fully like this. What do I mean by that? Let me just give you an example. The Quran was actually written like this. Notice what's missing?
Yeah.
The dots are missing, aren't they? Those dots. So the words did not have dots in them days. Yeah. So although the font was like this, the words were without dots. So this dot issue was going to become an issue that was going to become a new project for the Muslims in the coming future. So in the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, they dealt with this issue, and the font that Uthman radiallahu anhu came up with, or the version that Uthman radiallahu anhu he came up with in his era, is now called the Mushaf Uthman. So if you've ever seen the Quran and they say Mushaf Uthman, that's what it refers to. It doesn't mean Uthman's own innovated Quran. It just means the copy of the Quran that Uthman radiallahu anhu he legislated at his time, and he sent out to the major states. Now in Ali radiallahu anhu's time, what happened was they actually began to write the vowels. Right, so the basic form of writing vowels on top of these letters started, and then they were developed over time. Okay, these were developed over time, and as the years went by, after the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, so way after the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, somewhere around here, maybe 50, 60 years later, what happened was they began to place the dots on the Quran. So you had, for the first time, they began to place under ba, they placed a dot. Wherever there was a ya, they placed 2 dots underneath. Wherever there was a noon, 1 dot above. Right, so they began to place these dots. So slowly the Quran began to take shape like we see today. So eventually it became like this. And then also, after many years after, what happened was they divided the Quran into 30 parts. 30 parts, which we call the juz, or the para in Urdu, in Farsi. The para and the juz, which is these 30 portions of the Quran that we have. Every juz we have. And so they had that. They began to place these rukus. So in other words, they have this. So if you look in the Quran, in this copy of the Quran, I don't have it, but does everyone know what I'm talking about? At the side, they have they usually have it over here, ruku with the ayn, small ayn there, on the side of the Quran. Yeah. So that is actually called the ruku. So ruku basically means is here is where, if you want to recite, here is where a good place is to stop. If you want to go into ruku, in other words, when you're reciting the Quran, when you come up to that ayn, right, on the ayah, that ayn means basically that if you were reciting this in the Quran, this would be a good place to stop and go into ruku, do sajda, and come back and then continue from there, just like in Taraweeh we do. So they divided the Quran for those people who are not able to understand the words of the Quran, and so that they don't spoil the meaning of the Quran, they place these ayns, symbols, throughout the Quran wherever a new theme would start, a new topic would start. Does that make sense? And they also divided the Quran into 7 manzils, 7 portions, 7 equal portions. So you imagine the whole Quran divided into 7 parts. These are the 7 manzil of the Quran. And because some Sahaba would complete 1 Quran recitation in 7 days, so they divided it up into 7 of their recitations. And that's basically how the Quran really took off. Eventually they added all these little tajweed rules that you have. So in my Quran, that version that I've got, you can see this sad lam here. In some versions you might have a little jim, they have a symbol. And if you want to know more about these symbols, then at the back of your Quran you should be able to find jim, or like a meme, or a qaf, or a lam alif, like that, yeah, or any other sort of symbol. You can look in the back, you'd find the index in your Quran for that. Any questions on this one?
غمرتني بحبها ثم بعد